Shevla Jean Rafte was a 44-year-old from Pittston, Pennsylvania. She had 4 children and came from a large family. On the evening of May 28, 2006, Shelva and her on-again, off-again boyfriend went to a graduation party. After, they went back to his place where they got into a fight, and Shelva decided to walk the mile and a half home. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Denzel, and this is Unfound. I'm not the guy who should probably be talking about these things, but I'm not a believer in soulmates. I reject the idea that there is only one person in the world for each of us. People's tastes vary too wildly, and there are over 7 billion of us. Hey, we're bound to be attracted to more than just one person out there, right? However, I will tell you something I do believe in when it comes to relationships. There are some people who should never get together. And I don't simply mean moral people should stay away from immoral people. It's one of the oddest things I've experienced in my life, where people who I knew as being high-quality people then got into a relationship with each other to only see it go down in flames, and in very ugly ways. The finger-pointing, the name-calling, the backstabbing. It was suddenly like these weren't the people I knew at all. Instead, they were replications, like from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Why does that happen? I'm just not sure. Well, in the disappearance of Shelva Rafte, although she struggled with many issues in her life, everyone knew Shelva as being a good person. In fact, she remained close friends with one of her ex-husbands. Then Shelva met a man who also had a good reputation. Yet their relationship was toxic. Then Shelva was gone. And we, the public, must now wonder if she disappeared because they were no good together. And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Good's website, Charley Project. Shelva Rafte not only had a unique first name, gotten from a book, she started her life in a one-of-a-kind way. Shelva was born in the back of a car as her mother rushed to the hospital. Fortunately, both her mother and Shelva came through it 100%. Yet Shelva's adult life was even more difficult. She was married a couple of times, but couldn't find that lasting relationship. Shelva had expectations that weren't met, although she remained friends with at least one of her exes. From those unions, Shelva had 4 children, 1 girl and 3 boys, who she tried to care for as best she could despite her work situation that was up and down. Then Shelva met John Parra from a prominent Pittston family. They hit it off, but eventually, after a couple of years, they ended up in court, accusing each other of stalking and much worse. So on May 28, 2006, Shelva's sister Joanne graciously offered to hold Shelva's daughter's college graduation party at her house. Many people were invited. All of them were surprised when Shelva showed up with John, all attendees knowing the tumultuous relationship the two had. The belief was that the two weren't in contact with each other anymore. This proved to be wrong. According to witnesses, Shelva and John had an argument before they left the party. John's story, told days later, was that the two went back to his place where the arguing continued. Frustrated, Shelva took off on foot to walk back to her apartment, a mile and a half away. She was never seen again. Police investigated John, However, they were unable to prove anything he said was a lie. In addition, John took a polygraph, which he passed. Although the facts of Shelva's disappearance appear to be like many other cases involving women in turbulent relationships, we must examine each on its own by going over the particular circumstances and not take anything for granted. Doing this for Shelva's, these questions still need to be answered. Number 1. If Shelva walked home, why did no one report seeing her? Number 2. If Shelva truly never made it home that night, why was her TV on when someone finally got into her apartment? And number 3. If John did something to Shelva, could there be a mitigating factor given what Shelva was telling people about John in the weeks before she disappeared? Shelva's family does not believe she would have committed suicide. In addition, they don't believe she would voluntarily leave her children. The guests for this episode are Shelva's sisters, Joanne Decker and Shirley Masters. Unfound News. Unfound on the Ground premiered this past Sunday, May 24th, for premium Patreon members. Eric did a fine job, and so overall it went well. The good news for all of you is that we will be releasing the audio for this first episode on YouTube and on the website for free. When will this happen? A few days before the next On the Ground episode comes out. When will that be? Sometime in June. Please be looking for it. And please consider joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. Next, before you hear my voice for another episode, the June 2020 newsletter will have come out. If you'd like to get it and you know you're not on the email list, please contact me at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com, and I will put you on that list immediately. What's in the newsletter? I write in depth about things happening with Unfound, I comment on recent national missing persons news, and I give you recent updates on unfound cases, and a bunch of other stuff. Finally, Shelva Rafte's disappearance continues a recent trend on Unfound, where people I spoke to a few years ago are now appearing on the program. That started last week with John Polos. It continues this week with Joanne and Shirley. And it will continue with next week's disappearance. I am so happy all of these people decided to finally appear on the program. Thank you to all. Where you can find Unfound. Unfound supports accounts on Podomatic, iTunes, Stitcher, Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, Deezer, and Facebook. On Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, please join us on the Unfound Podcast Channel on YouTube for the Unfound Live Show. All of you can talk with me, and I can answer your questions. For Patreon this week, I need to thank Catherine. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound two of Shelva Rafte's sisters, Joanne Decker and Shirley Masters. Joanne and Shirley, welcome to Unfound.
Thanks for having us, Ed. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome to both of you. We're going to start where we usually do for interviews on Unfound. Let's just talk about Shelva, your two relationships with her, and let's start here. How many children were there? And I guess your maiden names were Conrad, in the Conrad family. How many children?
Well, I'm Joanne, and I'm the oldest, and there were 7 of us.
Wow, okay.
There were 4 girls and 3 boys.
Okay.
My younger brother, Gary, died when he was 29, which is now, how many years now? 34 years ago my brother died.
Wow.
And I thought that was the biggest tragedy in our family. But who would have ever guessed that it would have been the baby, Shelva, We, like a normal family, we had a lot of issues with health and finances and all kinds of things. My father was self-employed, and but we always were there for each other. The 7 kids were like a tight-knit group. And then when my mother and father split up, Shirley and I took over pretty much the mother role of all the younger brothers and sisters. Shirley is next to me in age. We're only 17 months apart.
Wow, okay. And so Shelva was the baby. She was the youngest of the 7?
Yes.
Okay.
And we treated her very, very good.
I bet.
We always took care of her and, you know, loved her children as if they were our own. Actually, her daughter, Janelle, is my godchild.
That's how close you were.
Yes.
Wow, okay. I have to ask you this, and I have this on, as all the listeners know, we do use outlines to do these interviews, but you, of course, your names are Joanne and Shirley, which are, I would say, common names, maybe not as common for women being born today, girls being born today, but maybe back when I was born. But she got the name Shelva. Where did that name come from?
Hi, this is Shirley.
Yeah.
And I like to tell the story about Shelva's name because a lot of people pronounce it Shelva with a B, and it is Shelva.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shelva was born on Route 92 as my mother and my aunt was taking her to the hospital because my father, being self-employed in the stone business, was on the road with the truck taking the load when my mother went into labor for the 7th child. And they stopped at the doctor's office in Nicholson, and he said, just keep on going. I'll follow you. Well, they didn't get far out of Nicholson on Route 92 to the hospital, and my aunt pulled over and quickly delivered the baby. And my mother asked her, if she wanted to name her, and she said she had just read a book and had an unusual name in it, Shelva, and she liked that name. And so my mother named her Shelva.
Wow. Do you have any idea what that book is? Any idea?
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm sure somebody's going to look that up now that we've said that. But that is one of a kind. I'm going to be 50 this year. I've never known another Shelva. Have either of you?
Only I've seen it on Facebook a couple of times.
Okay. So she gets this unique name. She's born in a car. Correct? Born in a car?
Correct.
And how did that go? Was she all right? I mean, everything came out healthy, baby?
No, they went on to the hospital after the doctor came, as you say, right behind him. And so they went on down to Mashopin to the hospital. And, of course, Shelva, when Grandma and Grandpa would take us to see the new baby, she was in isolation because she wasn't born in the hospital. But Shelva was born with a cleft palate, the same as our brother that passed away, Gary. And what's ironic about it is that I had this aha moment just a week ago that actually he was buried on Memorial Day, and we discovered we didn't know where Shelva was on Memorial Day.
Back in
but
2000.
They did have the health issues with the palate and as children, and they were repaired, and she was cute and happy. She was a pretty happy-go-lucky baby, and very happy and very pretty. Yeah, very pretty, very just bright and attentive, and she was just an all-around good kid.
And so
there was a gap between us. My mother had Joanne, Elvis, then me, 19 months later, and then 17. Then we had a brother, Fred, and then there was a gap because my brother Gary came along, and he is actually 8 years younger.
Wow.
So the three of us kind of grew up together.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Gary was born, 8 years later, he not only had he had a much more severe cleft palate, and he had a liver condition as a child. And my mother spent a good year and a half. In second grade, he began to hemorrhage, and the doctor all along just kept giving him vitamin shots and things, and he was yellow, and take him to Florida and get some sunshine, and in the winter, and once a week we'd go down and give him a B12 shot to the doctor's office, which was 12 miles away from our home, and we'd sit in the office and Gary'd get his shot. But my mother had a lot to deal with this sick child for a long time. And then, he had a little bit of a turnaround, and it was hard on my mother because at that time there was no self-employed people didn't have health insurance.
Yeah.
So when she got to Philly, the doctor said to her, you have to find a job with insurance. So she went, he said, because this child has some health issues and severe. And so she went to work in the factory for the health insurance. So needless to say, Joanne and I really had a lot of responsibility in that household.
Yeah.
We were all born right around 2 years apart, each and every one of us.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarity.
All right, let's move on to this. Talking about Shelva, I have it in my. What was she into? What was Shelva into? She gets into high school. Was she into academics? Was she into music? What were some of her interests as a teenager? Do you remember?
No, she was just an average student. But the biggest issue or hurdle when she was growing up is when my mother and father split. My mother left, and the 4 younger children stayed with my father. And so her being the baby, she kind of didn't get the full attention. Well, none of the 4 got the full attention that the 3 older ones got. So it was just almost a survival tactic. Went to school, came home, took care of what she had to do at home. That was about it. She never really got involved in anything extracurricular.
Okay. All right. So she gets to her late teens. Did she get a job? Let's talk about maybe her job, relationships. Let's move on to that then. Late teens, early 20s, what did she do at that time of her life? And we have to remember that she disappeared in 2006, and she was 44 at the time, but early 20s, what was she doing?
Well, basically, she did, right after graduation, she met a young man that she married and was pregnant with Janelle. And she had a nice wedding. I think it was very hard for her because, my mother did come to the wedding and participated, but there was very hard feelings with my father, and all of us kind of, in many ways, were very protective of my father, and it seemed like the last 3 were helping him run his household, and he was on the road a lot. But they would always come to Joanne and I to our homes, and then we were introduced to Marty, and that she was getting married and going to have a baby, and we met his family, and they had a nice wedding, and then Janelle comes along. So Shelva did only work in the only 2 careers I know that she had was working in a restaurant and working in a factory.
Okay. And how was that marriage?
And she also babysat for me. Being older, I didn't have my child until I was 30. She ended up, after they were married, renting a trailer that we had in a town, and she just, I don't know, I always go back how good she was with, I have 2 children, and how good she was with them. And this is very emotional. I kept thinking she was coming back for my son's wedding because she was so excited about it. Because, she did have him a lot. I'd give her money. She loved to buy nice, she had great taste in clothes. She always had cookies and baking, and, everything seemed so good and normal, celebrating birthdays together and holidays.
What happened to her marriage? His name was Marty. What happened to that relationship? I know they ended up getting divorced, correct? Why did that happen?
Well, there's 2 sides to every story. And, I see Marty and, of course, Janelle. We were together at Christmas, weren't we, Joanne? Yeah. With Janelle and Marty and all of his family and her husband's family. They came in and had a get-together that she arranged from where she lives in South Carolina. And so, everybody's very cordial, and but we never really go there about that marriage. I think they were, I guess I formed my opinion right off. They were just too young and struggling, and things went away. I don't know if both of them or either one was looking for more.
Okay.
I was very sad over that because we really liked Marty. We did a lot with the kids. He was very talented. He carved pumpkins. He'd make costumes, and they were a fun couple when they were first married with the kids.
And you're saying that you're still close to him all these years later. In fact, we're doing this interview on May 24th, 2020. Are you saying this previous Christmas in 2019 you saw Marty? You saw him?
Yeah, we were all together.
Wow.
We were together.
Wow.
We have a good relationship with Marty.
Okay. That's
well, that's
really good.
A word
that's really good.
I've never heard him make any remark on her disappearance or what she was doing, even though she moved on to other relationships. Then she'd eventually bring her kids into it. He's never said anything, so we just leave it as that.
Okay.
We have a family involved, and I was really happy he never badmouthed her, to my knowledge. Have you, Joanne? No. He's always very respectful.
Great. Now, I do have in my notes here that after they got divorced, however long that marriage was, that she did get married maybe again. She had another relationship in which she got married. I mean, how did that go? How were her relationships overall? And we're going to eventually talk about the guy she was in a relationship when she disappeared, but what were these other relationships like? And any other children, by the way?
Yes, there were 2 boys.
Okay.
She was remarried, and there were 2 boys.
Okay.
And I find that relationship difficult to talk about because after she had the first son with Marty, she had a girl and a boy with Marty, her first husband, and then she married Mike Rafte and had 2 sons. Mike was, well, first of all, let me say, they were both really good-looking guys. Shelva always had good-looking guys, but she always complained that they didn't share their money with her, that they were very, very, very tight, their purse strings, and each time she had to go out and get a job. And that's not what she wanted. She wanted to be a housewife and take care of her children. And every time she went out to get a job, she would hit a wall. It was like she would get depressed and say, I don't want to do this. I think she was always trying to find the right man who would take care of her.
Okay. And so I guess that relationship ended as well with Mike. So we have Marty, we have Mike. And how many children did Shelva end up having?
4. 4
kids.
children.
4 kids. Okay, so 3 boys and 1 girl.
Exactly.
Wow, okay. All right. So, but so what you're saying is that even though she was married and she was continuing to work, but she was maybe hoping for something a little different,
Exactly.
little different situation. Okay. And do you keep in contact with Marty to this day? Do you keep in contact with Mike?
We do. We speak, but
Mm-hmm.
he is very protective. Yeah, protective. He doesn't want his kids, of course, they're grown now.
Yeah.
But he sheltered them from all of this publicity and bad news, and but he definitely has his opinions. He talks endlessly about them, but yet he doesn't talk to the police about them.
All right, so she has these marriages. They don't quite go the way maybe that she wanted. But it sounds like, of course, you're still in contact with Mike. You're still in contact with Marty. So these divorces, although they happened, they weren't as dirty, we might say, as maybe a lot of other divorces that we know about, being that we're all adults here. So that's so that's very positive. So let's move on to this. Just some things that were going on, and we'll get to John here in a second. But, at that time of her life, early 40s, would you say that Shelva was suffering from any depression? I have to ask this, did she have any addictions? Anything going on, in her late 30s into her 40s, to your knowledge?
At that time, she used to say she couldn't drink because it would make her sick.
Mm-hmm.
Do I know that she had any addictions? I don't believe so.
Okay.
The police have researched it, and they said that she was not into drugs. Okay. But I'm not going to rule that out because it's very prevalent in our area.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So maybe you had told me once again in my notes that she had a son that was taken away from her after she got out of the hospital. What was that situation?
Well, I was involved with that with my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, our oldest brother's wife. She kept calling one day, and her and John were going to court. And because I believe she had trespassed, right, by driving by his house or something, they got into an argument. And, because she still had her own apartment. And she was just in a rage, and she wanted, for me to give her the money for $200 an hour for this attorney. And I know that she had told me she was in counseling, and she had given her counselor permission to call me because of the urgency in her state at that time. And she needed to be in court. And I kept saying, Shelva, I'll come down, but I'm not giving you the money. I'm so uncomfortable with this relationship. You just need to get out of it, drop it, don't go to court. And she had no money to begin with. And so Carrie and I went down. I believe it was February because the weather was terrible. There was like an ice storm. Mm-hmm. And when we got there, she was all dressed up and ready to go to court, thinking I would just hand her over the money. But prior to going, she said, I'm going to have this lady, this counselor, call me. And the counselor called because she was extremely worried about her. And she told her supervisor that, she was really afraid something may happen or Shelva might do something. Wow. She was like over the edge with this argument, but they were always arguing, and with John. So I went down, and the social worker said, if she does anything, I want you to call 911. Well, we get down there, and I said, no, we're down here to see what you need, take you home. My sister-in-law always could talk to her very, directly, and come on, Shelva, this isn't going to work. It's just endless. You'll never win. Let's just drop it. Why put yourself through it? So Shelva, I didn't see it. I guess I turned because the little boy was there, and he was probably about, 6 or 7 then, her youngest from her second marriage. And she said she grabbed a bottle of pills and threw in her mouth, and my sister-in-law hit her, or, to knock them away and get them out of her mouth. And so I said, do I call 911 now? And, all right, we agree we have to call 911. So, of course, the police and the ambulance came, and they took her to a hospital in Wilkes-Barre, and we waited and waited. Unfortunately, we had a pretty newborn baby. My daughter-in-law was babysitting and offered to ride down with me. We never thought we'd be involved in this tremendously long day and bad weather, and worried about, the mother wanted the baby back here, and we were worried about the weather conditions. And then we waited and waited, and I, finally a social worker called us in and said that they would be keeping her. And I didn't know what to do with this son, and Shelva, so I went in, and Shelva was very angry with me, of course, threw the keys at me, and said, go to the apartment and get Tyler, her son, book bag, because he was so excited. He was dancing. He was going to be in some little skit play the next day, and he had to be in school. I didn't even know where he went to school in Pittston.
Mm-hmm.
So when we left, we got in the car, and Terry and I, my sister-in-law, Terry Conrad, talked about it, and she said, we have to call Mike. We said, what will we do? And the child was still just oblivious to it, just, excited about his role in the program at school. So we call Mike, and we just, we said, Mike, look, there's just, a situation here, and Tyler, he has to be in school. Could you just take him for the weekend and get him to school tomorrow? So now we're back from Wilkes-Barre, we're back in Scranton, and he met us at a restaurant, like a Perkins or something, in the parking lot, and then he filed for custody, and it really took her, as Joanne said, over the edge.
Right.
Because that cut off some of her financial support, right, Joanne? Yeah.
Right.
And then she had a very close relationship with him. So
I just want to put this in the timeline. So she disappeared in May 29th, the day that this episode will be coming out, which is just a few days from now. But this happened, you said, in February of 2006?
No, this was before 2006.
Okay.
It was probably the year before, right, Joanne? That Tyler, when I let Mike take Tyler for the weekend, and then he filed for custody, he wouldn't give the boy back. And I think she went into a very deep depression after that. Yeah.
Okay, so you're thinking this happened in 2005 then?
Yeah, it was a year and a half before her disappearance. Yeah.
Okay.
This is all when this craziness with John was started. It was just getting crazier.
Okay, we're going to talk about John here in a second. Well, how would you portray her taking those pills? Was that like a cry for help, or do you think that she was actually trying to hurt herself? What do you think, being that you were there?
I think that I think she was trying. I hate to say this, but because Joanne and I both feel like we make her out to be so bad, but in that moment and at that time, that she was punishing me for not giving her the money and taking her going to court with her.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I don't think she really wanted to kill herself, although the social worker said, I have some concerns what she's going to do over this.
Okay.
And she did try something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what she was telling the social worker, but or the counselor. I don't mean social worker.
Okay.
So, I think that's how it came down. Was I being manipulated? I don't know. Joanne thought it was serious enough that she showed up about a week later, or after she got out of the hospital, with the money and went to court.
So what you're saying, this counselor who was working with Shelva was fearful given Shelva's disposition at the time, or mental disposition at the time, and then you show up in court and there she is, and right there in front of you and your sister-in-law.
I wasn't there. Joanne went with her.
Joanne,
I
okay,
refused.
Joanne, okay.
I just didn't think she should keep the battle going. The relationship was very odd to me, and I just thought that it had to end. I couldn't support it.
All right, Shirley. All right, so the counselor's telling you that she's a little worried about Shelva, and then on top of that, they see evidence of this, that she tries to take these container of pills right in front of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And from that, as you said, one of her sons ended up being taken by his father, and because of that, it started a custody battle.
Correct.
Okay. All right, let's move on to John. Being that he has been mentioned already a few times, I think the listeners need to know who he is. His name is John Parra, P-A-R-A, and we're just going to talk about him in general terms for now. We're not necessarily going to talk about it. We'll get to the disappearance soon enough. But how did he and Shelva meet? Do you know?
You want to take this, Joanne?
Yes. What I've always heard was that her best friend, Faith, took her to a party, and she met at this party.
Okay. And how long do you think that they were an item? And I know they were on and off, and we'll get into that in a moment. But how long would you say the totality of them knowing each other was between them meeting and then her disappearing? How many years, roughly?
Probably about 3 years. They met, they dated. At that time, she was living in Carbondale, and she was dating John, I would dare to say 6 months or more. And then she did move in with John.
Okay. In Pittston?
Yes. And then
in Pittston?
we were invited down there for Christmas, actually. And we met him, and he was saying how wonderful of a housekeeper and how she had painted and fixed his home so nice and took care of everything, and he was so pleased and happy.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually what happened was she broke up with him and got her own apartment.
About a mile away from,
mile and a half away from where he lived.
That's interesting to me because in my prior conversations with you, and the listeners should know, we've known each other since about 2017. But it seems like his family is well off. He comes from an influential family in Pittston, and it kind of sounds like that is the situation that she would have been looking for, that Shelva would have been looking for. Being with a man who was making good money, and she could just be a housewife or house girlfriend, but then she ends up moving out. Why?
Well, he didn't give her money. He kept her. But he didn't, I don't.
Okay.
She just lived there, cared for the house, and then his children would come weekends. And she did have custody of her youngest son at that time. The other son remained. He was older. He remained with the father, the Rafte father.
Rafte, okay.
And so,
what did you two think of John?
I thought he was a really nice fella. Definitely someone who could take care of her and treated her like she wanted to be treated. That's my first impression.
Okay. And so you like you said, you two live in the general area of where they were living. They would get together. You would see Shelva and John together.
No, we live about 40 minutes north. we didn't see them that often.
Not often. Okay. All right, so she meets him. They lived together for a while, but then she moved back out once again. Were you surprised by that?
I don't know. I think it was more of a financial thing, that because she really liked the school that Tyler was in, and she had access to a Y for extracurricular things for him to do. And she, I don't know what the split was about, but she thought that because of having Tyler, that she would get paid to care for him in a home by herself.
Okay.
She would get alimony support for the child. Child support is what I want to say.
Right. Okay. And
and housing.
And housing, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you think that's the reason that she moved out then?
I think so. I don't remember any.
Okay.
Do you remember any reason why she left?
It just seems like an unusual thing. Being the way, once again, the way you portrayed her, I didn't know Shelva. Of course, both of you do. It just seems to me that she had a nice setup there, and then to just move out and live by herself again seems like an unusual choice.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
And I don't remember why she went.
Okay.
Got her apartment. I really don't. But I think a lot of it was, keeping the son and having a relationship with the other husband, and just better off being in her own apartment, and even financially, than, living with someone.
Okay.
But, when you ask about John, she did portray him when she first met him. I remember she brought him up to our house for Thanksgiving, and his two children. And we decided, they were younger, and our kids were younger, we'd have some games or something to make them comfortable. But she portrayed him, this, he has this business, and, he's this businessman, and, he goes to Rotary, and she did say that he was a former alcoholic, very in and quite often with his sponsor. And, you have this family business, and the family all lives around, very much kind of like my life was, the family all around in the business. But, I was really uncomfortable, honestly, when they came, because it just looked like she hopped into a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Who are these people? Who are these friends that after she divorced? I wasn't, I had like a little bit of a red flag there. Nothing against John.
Mm-hmm.
He would do a lot of nice things, like take Tyler back to school, run up and down that turnpike in his truck and in a snowstorm and say, oh, I had to bring Tyler back, or, something. And I was thinking, man, he's very good. And Tyler seemed to like him at the time. He'd call him Johnny B, and he was a young, fun kid. But I don't know. It just, even at Christmas, Joanne, weren't we uncomfortable with his family there or something? There was just, I don't know. I personally didn't get it. I thought she jumped into another situation.
Okay.
And yes, I wanted her to have things and to be happy, but I just said, I don't know why. It just didn't feel right to me personally. It was just a personal opinion.
All right. I get it. So when would you say, once again, just approximately, if you can remember, so Shelva and John were living together. When do you think it was that she ended up going back to living by herself? What year do you think that was?
Probably
05. Okay. All right. So she moves back by herself. Any idea how John felt about this? Did Shelva ever tell you, well, John's really ticked that I did this? Or maybe did you run into John and he said, I can't believe that Shelva moved out? Anything like that? Any ideas?
John never offered anything. I thought he was very meek.
Okay. So, you've talked about him a couple times before we started specifically talking about him, and I think that the feeling the listeners are going to get is that at some point John and Shelva's relationship went a little crazy, and going to court, etc. Why do you think that all happened, and when did it happen?
Well, the relationship, they had broke up, and I guess they must have kept driving by each other's places to check in on each other. Because when I went to court, because John was suing her for stalking him, and he kept driving by her place, she kept driving by his place. She would call him, and he would call her, and it was back and forth. When I went to court with her, the judge said, "You're both acting like children, and I want you to stay away from each other. No contact at all."
Yeah.
And that's how it ended.
And when was that? When was this particular court date? Do you remember, Joanne?
I can't remember.
How long before her disappearance? Let's put it that way. How long before her disappearance? 3 months, 6 months?
Probably a good 9 months.
Did you ever notice any of this behavior going on? When they ended up in court, were either of you surprised?
Yes, I was shocked.
What about you, Charley?
I wasn't so shocked about Shelva going by to see if he was, because she always kind of thought he would move on and find someone else. But I was surprised that John did the stalking as much as her. And the only reason I know that is because that's what came out in the trial, that they both were doing it.
Okay. And this trial was in 2005?
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We have to remember she disappeared in May of 2006.
Right.
Did you ever see her stalking? Or were you either of you witness to John stalking her or Shelva stalking John?
No, we lived 40 minutes away.
Okay.
We weren't there.
Okay. Did she ever say anything to you on the phone? Hey, I went
No.
by John's today, or anything like that?
No.
None. Okay. Were you, so being that you didn't know about this, did you think that she had some new man in her life, or did you think that she was just going to be single for a while? What were your perceptions then at this time?
I think she was going out with girlfriends and going to bars and just being single and meeting people and dating. I don't think she was with anybody special, just enjoying her time and being a mother and doing things.
Okay. What was the result of this court appearance? They were just told to stay away from each other, and it was just simply that, or was there like a period of days that they were supposed to stay away from each other?
They were supposed to stay away from each other. I don't remember the exact amount of time, but it was definitely months. Okay.
Do you think that, Shelva, to your knowledge, either of yours knowledge, Shirley and Joanne, to your knowledge, do you believe that Shelva followed those rules? To your knowledge.
I think that she followed them almost all of the time. I can't guarantee she followed them, no.
Okay.
Because we weren't there, of course, but she would always say, she didn't want anything to do with John.
Okay. All right. Any signs, and I have to ask these questions, any signs, being that they had this relationship that became what I think a 21st century word would be toxic, any signs that John ever physically abused Shelva? Once again, anything that you two ever saw?
I never saw anything. My eyes were open quite wide when I went to trial with the two of them, because he was as insecure and worried about her as much as she was with him. I actually felt that he was more the stalker than she was at the trial.
Okay. All right, so you got to see that firsthand. So you were in the courtroom when all this was going down, and you saw what you heard what the judge had to say.
Right.
You were there. All right, that's very
Yes.
good. Thank you. You have a very good witness to this. And can you explain what you heard in court that John was doing, being that Shelva's the one that's missing and John isn't? Can you give an example of some of the things that John was doing, something that came out in the trial regarding this that John was doing to Shelva?
He was driving past her place, and she was calling John on the phone. Mm-hmm. That's what I saw and heard.
Okay, great. And do you think, from what you heard about, once again, from 2005 and these proceedings, do you think that John was trying to get Shelva to take him back? To get back into
Not at that point.
No? Okay.
No, it was much later.
Okay.
Because she didn't have anything to do with him for months.
Okay.
She was going out and meeting other people and just.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. So let's move up to 2006. Let's just cover once again, what you two know. We can only talk about what you two saw from the beginning of 2006 until she disappeared in May of 2006. How do you think that Shelva was doing? Living on her own? How was her mental health? Was she working? Overall, how would you say that your sister was doing?
Well, I think it was a struggle for her because she worked as a waitress and ended up doing dishes and ended up doing all kinds of things that she felt was beneath her. And then she got a job at a factory for a while. And it was a struggle, and to keep Tyler, but she didn't have Tyler at that time, right? No, she didn't have Tyler at that time. So she was very depressed because she didn't have him. Because he was gone, she was going to lose her housing, and she didn't have any extra money. She was getting help with what she could with a card, and she was looking at what's her next step in life. Where's she going? What's she going to do? So she had signed up for some college classes, I know, and she was thinking about going back. Oh, she did go to beauty school. I forgot that part. Oh, yeah. And she was looking at getting her license because the school burned down.
Wow.
Go through the state to recover her licensing.
Huh. Okay.
So she was at a point where she didn't know which way to turn, but very depressed because she didn't have her son with her. And she met a lot of men, I guess, but nobody, that it was any relationship.
Okay.
She had dated several people, we found out, but it was just very casual dating, nothing serious.
But I don't know how they threw this in, but even when she went for that job and after Tyler, somehow John gave her a car.
Yes.
So they really were playing games back and forth here.
So something obviously was going on, and we should understand, you two have your own lives. Even though she is your sister, you love her very much, but you have your own kids. You have your own things to take care of. It's not, you're not her keeper. So I of course, we all understand that, and we would never expect, I would never expect all of you to know everything that your sister was doing. Of course, I have two brothers and a sister, and I don't know what they're doing from day to day either. So,
That's correct.
So we realize that your knowledge is going to be limited because you have your own lives, and the fact is that Shelva was an adult and she's asked to take care of some of her own stuff. But how often, I should ask, were you two seeing her or talking to her on the phone? Once a week, every couple weeks? What do you think back at that time of early 2006?
Well, that was early that time after the court and separation, and she was phone. She did start calling a lot because she really told me. What I remember was a February night, and my husband, oddly enough, wanted to go to a theater, and he was in the car, and I answered the phone, and Shelva was really, really upset, like, what are you doing? I'm alone down here. I really don't like being alone down here. It's kind of creepy. And so we talked and talked, and my husband came in and go, are we going? And so I said, Shelva, why don't you want to go to movies with us? We'll come and pick you up, because we were going to movies in Scranton. And we picked her up, and she was so happy to be with someone. She was extremely lonely. And so she... and after the movies, we went out to eat, and, she really didn't want to go home. She we disagreed that she'd spend the weekend with us. So she came back to our house, and I remember Sunday morning, I was making breakfast, and she was just sitting there. I don't know, I just remember thinking of her like, she's like a little girl, and of course I think of her as my baby sister, and now another bad relationship and alone down there and didn't want to be. And that's when we went out to the garage, because we don't smoke in our house or anything, to sneak a smoke. And she said to me, she started talking about John, and that's when she said, if anything should happen to me, look at John. And I went ballistic that that's what she's sitting down there worrying about. And why would you go back? And why can't you, you've got to find some other arrangements and get out of it.
And when do you think this happened?
Like,
and when do you think this was, Shirley, approximately?
That was after the court hearing and Tyler was gone. So that we agreed that was 2004.
Five.
So I really believe I know it was the dead of the winter. So
early 2006? Because when I think of dead of the winter in Pennsylvania, I think of January, February. I don't think of December.
Yeah, me too. I know it was after that time, January, February. She was extremely lonely and didn't want to be alone anymore.
All right, so it sounds to me she's very lonely, living by herself. Has this on again, off again relationship with John, things probably that she shouldn't be doing. I will say again, it sounds to me like, the difference between love and hate is a lot closer, is a lot smaller difference than probably we all realize. And they couldn't stand each other, but they couldn't stand being away from each other either, maybe. I mean, he's giving her a car.
And John always said that he would. I love her so much. Yeah. I would do anything. I'd sell my business. We'd move away. He told us that himself. Yeah, and she would say that he would think that. And I think she liked that idea because, you're sitting in the middle of a lot of family, and want to move on. And they were both looking for something new.
So why do you think they had so many problems? Why were they... If they wanted both the same thing, why were they stalking each other and not being together? Because maybe we can cover that topic a little.
I think Shelva was afraid of him in many ways and disliked how his relationship with his daughter was. And
okay. All right, that's a good answer. Let's just move on to this. So we come up to this graduation party that happened on May 29th, 2006. Whose graduation was it? Were you two there? What do you remember about all of that? What do you remember about that day?
I went to the college because my daughter graduated the same day as Janelle. My daughter and Janelle are the same age.
Okay.
Oh, they're a year apart, I think. But anyway, and they're very close. And you could feel the tension. And it was with Shelva. She was pacing. Had her granddaughter with her. Janelle had a daughter when she graduated from college. And Janelle did graduate with high honors and all. But Shelva was totally distracted with whatever was going on between her and John. It was extremely uncomfortable.
But she showed up. There was this graduation.
It was an outdoors graduation, and she just would get up from her seat and pace.
Now, Joanne, I understand this graduation party was at your house?
Yes.
Okay. How long was that arranged beforehand? I mean, how much was this a big graduation party for Janelle, or how would you, being that it was held at your house, how would you explain this graduation party?
Well, Janelle is my godchild.
Mm-hmm.
I live out in the country, but I have a patio and pool area, and because I'm a gardener, I have extensive planting in my yard. So it's a nice location.
And
to have a party.
But you weren't far from the college either.
Yeah, that's on top of that. The college is only about maybe 12 minutes away. So my godchild Janelle asked if Aunt Joanne, could I have my graduation party at your house? And I said yes. So in the meantime, my daughter and I went on a cruise, and my husband. And I said to Shelva, well, the least you can do, and that's how I put it, the least you can do, because she didn't have any money. She was depressed. I said, the least you can do is get the house ready for the party. And she came up while I was on the cruise and cleaned my house, cleaned the garage, got everything prepared. She even went home and was baking beans and making salads and putting on this big food feast there was probably, I would dare to say, 150 people here.
Wow.
Her and her friend were cooking.
Wow.
The friend's face that fixed John up, that introduced John to.
And Faith came with Shelva to clean my house. So when I came home from the cruise, Shelva and Faith were here cleaning, and everything looked great. And we sat down at the table. My daughter, myself, Faith, and Shelva. And we sat down, and she said to me, if anything ever happens to me, you better look at John. Well, I was taken back by it. And I said, why would you say that? And she said, because I know too much. And I said, are you afraid? And she said, no, I'm not afraid. And I blew it off. I just thought, oh, it's her being dramatic. I'm not buying into that. And she left and went home to finish cooking and getting prepared for the party the next day.
So just so we're clear.
My rule at that time was Joanne was on the cruise.
Mm-hmm.
Joanne was away, and I knew they were having this graduation party from the time that Janelle announced it, and it had to have been less than 6 weeks before because, well, we had a neighbor and my children's childhood friend getting married. My son was in a wedding, and we had, we planned on being about 18 miles away from Joanne's house to this wedding. And I said to her, well, we'll go to the wedding. So I stopped, I'll back up. So Joanne was on the cruise, and I had this doctor's appointment, and I knew it was Shelva's 44th birthday. And I called her, and she said, she had a cell phone then. I'm at Joanne's, getting ready for the party. And I said, well, great. So on my way home, I'll stop and see you for your birthday, and I had a present for her. And she's kind of going through the motions, but she was down. And I didn't realize how broke she was, so a friend said she had to borrow money from her to even make the food. But she didn't want to give that appearance to Janelle or us. So,
just so I understand something, going back to a point that something that Joanne said. So, Joanne, are you saying the day before she disappeared, Shelva told you, and there were other witnesses to the statement, that if anything happened to her, that people should suspect John? The day before she disappeared, Shelva said that to you?
Yes. To my daughter and to her Shelva's best friend, Faith.
Okay. All right.
But she had also said that to her own son, who lived with her ex-husband, Rafte.
Okay.
He even said that Shelva had said that to him.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting about that, her making these comments to each of us, me in the winter, Joanne before the party, and I never knew about her son until after her disappearance that she said that too. We never shared it with one another. I thought that was interesting.
Okay, we'll surely talk about that. I just want to stick with the graduation party. So you have this graduation party all planned the day before. She, while you're gone, she cleans the house, and all these people show up on May 29th, and Shelva shows up with John. Everybody's surprised by this.
Not everyone, just me personally, because I went to court with them about the stalking, and they were supposed to stay away from each other. So my mouth dropped open when John walked in with her. That day it was 90s. It was hot. Everybody was in the pool. Everybody was drinking. My impression was she asked John to come just to save her because she had to go up and meet all of her ex-relatives and her ex-husband and all of the Janelle's grandparents and aunts and uncles, and she needed the support of John just not to look, I think, beaten down and alone. That was my impression.
She kind of wanted to put on an appearance to maybe show those, hey, I'm moving on. Hey, I'm moving on.
Very nice man, and
right.
that he's well-to-do, and he looked nice. He looked older than her. Janelle and Shelva looked about the same age, to be honest with you.
Okay.
That's how youthful Shelva looked.
Okay. Now, I also have in my notes, once again, from the conversations we had a while ago, that something ended up happening at this graduation party. Did eventually Shelva and John get in an argument that other people witnessed?
No, that's not how it happened.
Okay, explain how it happened.
The party was a huge success. Lots of drinking, hot. Swimming. Shelva had brought several outfits in a carry-on bag. She brought a change of clothes for swimming, a cover-up. She brought warmer clothes for a night because in Pennsylvania it does get cold at night, even though it's 90 during the day. And she brought John, and John was just hanging out, and she was flittering all around, talking and to everyone. I mean, she just was a social butterfly that day. John just kind of stayed in the corner by himself. And then eventually I asked him if he would cook a few more hot dogs and hamburgers for the group. And he, of course, did it. But he kept watching her and watching her all day. Kind of like looking at every move she made, to be honest. And that day, she introduced me to someone and said, "This is my oldest sister, Joanne." I said, "Oldest? Why do you have to describe me as the oldest?" That's the last thing she said to me.
Okay. So do you remember Shelva and John leaving this party?
At that point, it was about 11 o'clock. Because I had been gone for a week, came home, and put on this huge party that I went to bed early about 11 o'clock. So I didn't see John and Shelva leave. I heard later from people that attended the party that they had left and somebody witnessed them having an argument in the front of my home down by the road. So it wasn't right where the party was. It was down, I don't know.
At the end of the driveway.
Okay.
Yeah, at the end of a long driveway.
All right, somebody else witnessed this.
We don't know which way they went home, but she got in his truck and they left.
Okay. Now, being that Shelva is the one that disappeared, and this will, of course, be well after the fact, so we're going to have to jump around in the timeline a little bit. What does John say happened after they left the party? What was his story?
John claimed that she went home with him to his home. They got in an argument, and I think it was over, we're not sure, we're assuming, that she invited him to her daughter's graduation party. Why couldn't she go with him to his daughter's graduation party?
Mm-hmm.
And Ed, I just want to add, I had written a note here. I'm glad Joanne covered that, because when I was talking to you about being at the actual college day location, where Shelva was really stressed and smoking a lot and really tense, and you could tell there was anger. It was because he was attending her daughter's graduation, but she was clearly told that Kylie was graduating from high school, was not allowed to be at Kylie's graduation with him. Okay. That was an ongoing battle those couple weeks.
Okay, and when do you think that this high school graduation for Kylie, who is John's daughter, was that before or after the college graduation? I'm going to guess after.
Yes, that's what I assumed it was after, because they were still they were really at it about that doing Janelle's graduation. Okay.
So John says that after they left, they went back to his place, and this argument continued. And your belief, because you have some information to back this up, was that John gets to go to Janelle's graduation, but Shelva doesn't get to go to Kylie's graduation.
Correct.
Okay. So then what does John say happened after this argument? What does he say Shelva did after this argument or during this argument that was allegedly at his house?
From my understanding, they got in an argument. I believe there could have been pushing and shoving, because I remember them saying, her best friend Faith said there were soda bottles on the floor, a plant was tipped over, and the kitchen was a mess. Okay, so that's I'm only hearing. John said that they argued, and apparently he took away her phone that he had given her and was paying for, because he found men's phone numbers on her phone. He claims that Shelva left walking from his home at 1 o'clock in the morning to walk to her apartment, which was about 1.5 miles away. Now, when you walk that route, it is no street lights. It's along the river. It's first you go out a long drive, down a long, steep bank. You go to the river. You got to cross the river. Then you got to go up these really high hills where Shelva's apartment was.
Okay. And how far of a walk is this?
It's about a mile and a half in very dark, lonely, very, I don't know how to describe it.
Is it in the middle of a town? Is it out in the country? What is it?
It's in town, but it looks like it's in the country. It's through, you have to walk a long road until you get to the main road. I would say probably a half a mile down to the main road, and then from there, you have to walk. It feels like it's 5 miles away.
Yeah, it does. It's
Okay.
And
So it's a mile and a half.
You come out of this little coal area down a hill. Where we drove it many times trying to see what other routes she could take, or how she would know to get back to this apartment in the dark. I don't know. It was just very strange that she would go walking.
Well, we're not going to get into what's strange. All I want to know is what he said, and he says that she went for a walk. Okay. So he claims that's the last time that he saw her.
Right.
Okay. So when do people, would you say that this, at 1 in the morning, going to be very many cars on these streets where should be walking?
From his home down to the main road, there'd be very few cars.
Okay.
But the main drag would be very busy.
Okay. So do you know if she'd ever walked that before? Do you know of any time that she'd ever walked from John's home? Never. Okay. So when do people start realizing maybe that Shelva isn't around, that she went missing, that she disappeared? How long did that take?
I got a phone call the next morning from Faith, her best friend. And Faith said, "Do you know where Shelva is?" Because Faith was down helping Shelva cook for the party and had her granddaughter, Faith's granddaughter, with her. And she had left her school books at Shelva's apartment and needed them for the next day to go to school. Mm-hmm. So So Faith was calling me to see if I knew where Shelva was. I said, I don't know. It's like I just didn't want to deal with this after a whole day of the party and the mess, and there was people sleeping overnight here, and I just went, you better call John, see if she's up there. And so they called John and said what I just said, that she had left 1 o'clock in the morning walking to her own place.
Okay.
And Faith was down at Shelva's apartment, and her car was behind the apartment, but Faith couldn't get in to Shelva's apartment. She knocked and knocked and knocked. So she went up to see John, and that's where Faith said that the kitchen was all messed up with soda bottles and plant tipped over and dirt on the floor.
She saw this at John's?
Yes.
Okay.
And John told her that she went walking home, so then Faith called me back. And I told Faith she should call Janelle and tell Janelle. In the meantime, I called Janelle and said, Faith is down at your mother's apartment, needs to get in, and can't find her. So once I called Janelle, her and her to-be husband drove down there to try to find Shelva, and they went to the police to say that she was missing.
Okay. Did they do this because they went to her place and knocked on the door and she wasn't there?
Exactly.
All right. Okay.
And Janelle felt something was seriously wrong. She went up to John's apparently too.
Okay. And of course Shelva wasn't there. He tells her, or it says that, Shelva left last night. We got into an argument and she left. That's what he
Right.
said. Okay. How and when does somebody eventually get into Shelva's apartment?
It was days later.
Days later.
They wouldn't take the report immediately.
Mm-hmm.
They just said, "Oh, she has a right to go missing." It was surely it had to be weeks later, right? The police went in.
Wow. Did nobody else have a key to her place? Did the landlord not have a key to get in there? Nobody thought of doing those things?
Nobody thought about doing them, I guess.
Okay. All right. So she goes missing very early, I guess, on May 30th at 1 a.m. John says that she walked, and seemingly she didn't get home because when they went over there the next day to get these books, she's not there.
Right.
Okay, and it's locked.
Right.
All right, and once again, in those days after, you're concerned. I'm sure Shirley's concerned. Your family's concerned. But nobody went to the landlord. Nobody had an extra key to go inside Shelva's to see if she's even there. I mean, it was possible that Shelva did get home and maybe had a heart attack while she was in bed, for all you knew. She could have been in there the whole time.
I think Janelle was in charge of it at that point, Shelva's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She's the one who was dealing with the disappearance, really.
Okay.
We were like on the sideline at that point.
Okay, and that's fine. But I guess what I'm saying is nobody went in her apartment. It very well could have been that Shelva was deceased inside her apartment.
They must have went in there because they did get these granddaughter's books back.
Oh.
So they did. They had to have gotten in there. But the police did not take the missing person.
Okay. Well, when somebody did figure out that she was missing and her place, I guess, was revisited if those books were gotten, and she wasn't there, I don't know what they were thinking there at the time when the books were gotten, but when it did become a missing persons case, maybe a couple weeks later, what condition was the apartment in when somebody started taking this more seriously?
Well, the police said it best, is that it looks like she never came home. It was just how she left it.
Okay. Let me ask you some specific questions, being that I have these in my notes. When they went into her apartment, was the TV on?
They said it was, and I assume that was because when she went in to get her granddaughter's books, she knew the TV was on.
Okay. And no signs that she ever made it back to her place. For example, her car was at the place, but her purse wasn't there. Maybe the clothes that she was wearing at the party, those have never been found.
Never. No.
Okay. So
some clothes I did see them in the police office. I one day just went in and asked to see the belongings that they took from John's house and Chief Powers out of the evidence room. And he did say to me, "Stay here." I mean, I had made this appointment, and he came out and he had rubber gloves, and he told me, I couldn't pick up anything or anything. And I looked into the bag, and I recognized what everyone said that she was wearing from the photos, in a hairbrush, just a few things in the bag, and but that they recovered from John's house.
So what you're saying is when they started looking into Shelva's disappearance, they found clothes at John's home, even though they weren't supposed to be a couple anymore.
Well, that day at the party they were, obviously, and she went home with him, and she, like Joanne said, she had a bag with a change of clothes.
Okay. I
can't say that all the clothes that everyone spoke about were in the bag. Actually, it was quite skimpy from what they said she had, and her friend remarked, one of them remarked that he had washed her clothes and thought that was very strange. Was that Faith, right? Yeah. Faith said he washed her clothes.
because I thought that was in all the outfits. They kept saying she had khakis, and she had this little white shirt, and then she had this, type of bathing suit. And I just thought, okay, that's, at least he showed me that, which I think.
All right, so the police
reason
showed you the clothes that were at John's place.
What they brought back, yes.
What they brought back.
To them.
Okay.
A very small amount of clothing from what I heard she had.
Okay. You said that this walk takes you along a river of some type. Did the police look into the river? Did they do any walk-alongs regarding it to find anything? Let's start there. What did the police do?
As far as I know, because I didn't go down, they did do a search of the river and the banks, and they did have the FBI come in and looked in the river itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe they did say maybe even a helicopter thing. They did do a briefing of how they, I think the term is scoured the area.
Yeah.
And, what they just trying to think if she walked, like which way would she went? She was smoking real heavy then, and, there had to have been a cigarette butt or something. And that's all we know in the family briefing.
Okay. Anybody ever come forward once it got out that Shelva Rafte was missing? Anybody see her walking along the road that night? Any cars that might have passed her? I'm going to guess that there couldn't have been too many people walking on the road at 1:30 at night that night. Anybody in a car come forward to say, yeah, I saw a woman walk the streets that night, to your knowledge?
Bill and Missy were the lady.
There was, at the foot of the hill before the river, there was a lady there who was kind of like the town gossip, and she told a friend that she heard a girl screaming outside that night.
Okay. I don't know what to make. I'm going to just.
I don't either.
That's hearsay of a scream that could have been anything. I'm asking you specifically, did anybody see a woman walking along the road that night?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. All right. Of course, John was questioned regarding this. Did he ever take a lie detector test? Would he allow the police to look around his property? I guess there was these clothes, but, really take a good look to make sure that his story checked out about how she walked off. Was he given a lie detector test, and was he helpful in the investigation?
He did take a lie detector test, and he allegedly passed it.
Okay.
And he lives on a property. His property at the top of the hill is acres and acres of used cars, because he had a garage, he had a used car parts business, he also crushed cars to be sent to New York. So that all of that junk was all around. He allowed the police to go on there, but he had a fit when the family wanted to do a search. He wasn't happy with that. He was standoffish. He didn't walk with people. He just sat in his vehicle watching.
But he did allow his property to be searched.
By the police, yeah.
Okay. Ben, he had a lie detector test, and he allegedly passed it. I know you weren't there, but from what you know, he allegedly passed it.
Correct.
Okay. Were Shelva's ex-husbands, I'm remembering their names as being Martin, and Mike, is that correct?
Correct.
Were they talked to you about the disappearance? Especially, it seems, Mike, being that there seemed to be a custody thing going on there. Were they spoken to regarding Shelva's disappearance, where they were that night?
Never. The police still to this day have never spoke to her ex-husbands. And I want to add, her husband, Mike Rafte, said, there is no way Shelva committed suicide. She would never. If she committed suicide, it would have been out in the public with all to be seen, so she could say, see what happened to me, what they did to me. It was not, she would never have done it away.
Okay. Well, that's just the person's opinion, right? That's just his opinion from what he knew about Shelva. Okay. Did the police ever speak to any of Shelva's children? I don't know exactly how old all of them were. Janelle was old enough to graduate from college, but did the police ever talk to any of them about their mother's disappearance?
Not one of them. Only Janelle had contact with the police.
Okay.
The older boy, Josh, he lived up, hour and a half away. And then the two younger boys, Tyler probably was about 8 and Michael was about 10. And Mike Rafte, their dad, really protected them. He didn't want much known at all about this.
Okay.
About what was going on.
Okay. Any proof, any evidence that Shelva could have gotten home and maybe contacted if she was getting out, if she and John were not exclusive, she was getting out and seeing any other guys? Do you know if the police ever bothered to track down any of these other guys who she might have met just being out?
Yes. They brought in, probably about 3 people at least. The newspaper boy who she always joked around with, who was limited, but they even went to his home and searched it. There was another fella who she knew, and they brought him in, and then he eventually moved out to Arizona about, wasn't it, last day?
Someone in that community we didn't know. We only heard of after this.
Okay. All right. And I'm guessing that maybe they had alibis. Maybe they're still suspects in this disappearance. Of course, we aren't sure what happened. But what you're saying is the police did try to track down some of these other guys and talk to them.
Yes.
Okay. At what point did the state police of Pennsylvania take this investigation over?
They have never taken the investigation over. They only were helping Pittston at the very beginning.
Okay.
And Pittston has always been in charge and as a jurisdiction. They have never turned it over to anyone.
Okay. So you said that the state police were involved a little bit at the beginning, but here in 2020, would you say they're not involved at all?
Yes.
Okay.
They're not involved.
Okay. And how long, once again, looking back at this now, how long would you say that the police worked on Shelva's disappearance before they kind of said, you know what, we don't know what to tell you? She, who knows? How long?
The last involvement the police that I know had was Trooper King from the barracks at that time. He actually, the reason that involvement with the police became once again engaged was because, I'm going to blank here. What was the year the Cleveland girls were found? You remember the girls?
It's been a while now. It's been a while now.
Show.
It's been a while now.
Okay.
It's been a while.
All right.
5 years,
right.
maybe.
Well, I happen to be watching this show, but anyway, we had requested that Shelva's case be taken to Harrisburg, where there was someone actually locally here that we should have known. He didn't know. He was a detective and had moved up to head this Central Intelligence Unit,
Missing persons,
over the police. And so his name was Steve Stout, and we became involved with him. And we learned that you can have your case brought forward. But you have to remember that everyone is screaming. Is that how it happened? You want to say it's not how it happened? Okay. Well, anyway, the police, state police team was a part of that presentation with Pittson Police. And they all went to Harrisburg because their job was to do an overview of the case and only offer tips or assistance. And that was the last that ever, once that presentation was done, that the police that we knew was involved.
Okay. And I looked that up. That was 2013 that those women were discovered in Cleveland. That was Ariel Castro who had kidnapped them. That was 2013. 13? Yep.
Yeah. Yes. Then it had to have been before that. Well, it's 20 now. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
7 years ago. 7 years ago. 7 years ago.
How that happened was I was very frustrated and calling everybody and every agency and organization because I felt our hands were tied. They weren't doing anything. I had put the first person in charge of Shelva's case said he went out and worked on it diligently. I would dare to say probably 6 months to 9 months. Then it went to another person, and it went to another person. And every time we went down, by the third person, he said, look, I don't have time to look at it. It would take me 6 months to go through her paperwork, and I've got dog barking issues to deal with. I don't have the time to look into this. And I knew it was dead in the water at that point. And that had to be probably within probably a good 7 years in.
Okay. So once again, right around that 2013, 2014
yes.
time frame.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And I know that, though, to this day, when was the last time either of you spoke to the Pittston Police Department about Shelva's disappearance?
I was in contact with them last week, of course, through a phone call and an email. The sergeant that has the sergeant, I call him sergeant. I had sergeant and detective in my email, but he's always been very good. And I know that once he went on and he was just new and assigned to the case and did go to Harrisburg and did do the review and did try to do the follow-ups. They can only do what they can do, as he tells me, because it's a cold case when they get a tip. And so I spoke, with him last week, and I did ask him if we could have a family follow-up. Prior to that, being with the police, we did do a program through the Foundation Lead Me Home Today for missing adults with the DA's office and FBI and the state police. And I will say that day at Wilkes College, when we walked in, there were 3 or 4 television stations, and Sergeant Murphy, Detective Noon, Lynch, now with the FBI, made sure that we got interviews on all those TV stations.
Good.
And so those were the last. But has anything really resulted? No. But I try to stay in touch with him to, occasionally of what would be, if anything's going on, or if we could have a meeting, because I wanted to do, we get frustrated, and I think we need to sit down and talk with them. And he said that they were there, and that, the family would have to arrange the meeting, the time around their schedule, and it would happen. And I'm having a sense that we're ready for a meeting. Okay.
Let's move on to the rest of this case. Now, some of these things are going to be things we've already talked about, but we're going to talk about them a little deeper, and then some of these other topics will be new. Let's just start here. You had mentioned something about Shelva's phone, any cell phone records that you know about, any records, any pings, anything else. We have to remember 2006. Most people started having cell phones around this time. Any cell phone information for this disappearance at all?
You want to tell what happened at your house here? She was on the phone at the party. I wasn't here, but this is what had been told with Faith and others, that Shelva was on the phone a lot. No? Before, and Faith, she was using her friend's phone, Faith's phone. She did not have a phone.
Okay.
Apparently, is this correct, Joanne? That it was understood that John took the phone away
that night of the fight.
Okay.
She had her own phone that John paid for, but
Okay.
John found that
numbers.
numbers on it, and he took the phone away.
Okay. Has John ever reproduced that phone for the police? Did he ever give the phone to the police that they could look into
I
it
don't know.
themselves?
I don't know.
Okay. So John was paying, any idea how long John was paying for this phone that Shelva was using, even though these two were supposed to be staying away from each other?
We didn't know that until afterwards, so we have no idea.
Well, I'm sure you didn't know that. I'm just saying after the fact, were you able to establish how long John had been paying for Shelva's phone?
No, we don't know that either.
No. And do you know if the police ever checked Shelva's own phone records? Those phone records from the phone?
We don't know that.
Okay. Well, these are certainly things, if you're going to have another discussion with the police, you should put that on your agenda for sure. Of course, it's too late 14 years later, but at the time, it should be in the file for her disappearance if they've done that.
That is a question I have, Ed. Thank you.
All right.
It is.
All right, great. You said that Shelva, during this graduation party, was using somebody else's phone? Is that what
I thought her friend Faith said that she had to use her phone because I don't know why she was using the phone. I just seen over the years Faith said that several times.
All right, so you're leaving the impression that at this graduation party that day, May 29th, while she's there with John, you're telling me that Shelva was using somebody else's phone to call people?
That's what I understood her friend saying, but Joanne does not remember that.
She doesn't remember that. Okay. Because it would be interesting, once again, too late now, probably, but if she was using somebody else's phone, that day while she's there with John, I have to wonder who she was calling.
Oh, well, I will confirm that with Faith.
Yeah.
I want to confirm that because Faith has always, for years, sends things and notes and Facebook and how she puts her Christmas decorations up and still thinks of her and her best friend. And, there was a period of time people didn't know. We weren't really, it was questionable if she could be trusted. Right, Joanne? And so there was mixed feelings with the relationship, but she's always stayed in touch.
Okay. But that is something
because
you might want to double.
Because she was friends with John, that's why Shirley said that. Faith was friends with John also.
Yeah, she introduced the two, right?
Right.
All right, so it's hard to say where then maybe her loyalties might lie.
Exactly.
All
That's
right.
where the not trusting was.
Okay.
And we had to stay a little bit distant from them. The police told us that we were not to talk to any of them, ask them questions. It was their investigation and to stay away. So we couldn't talk to any of the people who might know more.
Okay, I understand.
Like her neighbors and things. Right after it happened, we had a family meeting, invited some of these people up, and the police were extremely upset. They were all suspect.
Yeah. Okay. Well, regarding this friend, Faith, is she also the one you said before? She was the one that went to John's place and found things a little disheveled?
Yes.
Why don't you once again explain what she says she saw?
She said she went in and the kitchen was a mess. She saw soda bottles on the floor, a plant tipped over, dirt on the floor. She helped John clean up. And yet, when the police went to John's house, I asked them what condition it was in, and they said, oh, it was dusty like any bachelor's place would be. There was no signs of any struggle or fight.
Okay. And once again, we have to remember, though, that Faith and John were friends, and so she's leaving you the impression that John's place usually didn't look like this. There usually weren't bottles lying around the place, and there usually wasn't a plant that was tipped over.
Right.
Okay.
And I've seen the house, and it's a very nice house.
Okay. So maybe something happened. Maybe he has I guess a daughter who's in high school. Maybe while he was at the party with Shelva, she had her friends over and they trashed the place. Possible?
No, she didn't live with him.
Oh, she didn't.
She lived with her mother, and it was a couple-hour drive.
Okay, so we're not sure then if Faith saw this, why the place was in that condition. Okay. All right, just not sure what to make about that. Might be signs of something, could be signs of nothing. Now, I just want to touch upon something that you heard Shelva say, not just you, but others, the day before. That Shelva said to you that if she disappeared, that police and yourselves should suspect that John did something to her. Is that right?
She said exactly, you better look at John, because I know too much.
Okay, and we're going to get into that comment in a moment. But Shirley, she also said that to you, but months before that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I never shared it because she stayed over Saturday night, Sunday night, and I had to go somewhere about 10 in the morning, and I came back, and she left a note. She was gone. She went back to Pittston. And I thought, why would I ever repeat that? They probably just had a fight. But I think it was a neighbor that picked her up and took her back to her apartment. And I was so upset with her because why we just had this conversation. So I wasn't going to repeat it because I thought that was the nature of their relationship.
Right. It was a toxic relationship, and people in those situations do blow things out of proportion. And we do know that women have made statements like that for a very long time, and they don't end up going missing. But then some people...
I watch a lot of shows, and they do end up missing.
Well, they do, but we only know about the ones that went missing because they're the ones that went missing. So, we don't know, but it's certainly something. But obviously, she was fearful of John for some reason making that comment to you and then making it to you, Joanne, with other people there, with Faith there. Was Shelva's own daughter, Janelle, there as well for this conversation?
No, my daughter.
Your daughter.
My daughter was there.
Okay. And I just need to follow up with that. Did you ask her why that was?
I did. I said, why would you say that? And she said, because I know too much.
Well, let's talk about that right now. This is very controversial, and I really don't know how deep we want to get into this. But being that she said this to both of you, and I guess you've told me, Joanne, there is an email where there is proof that she said this to somebody else. So this is not hearsay or a rumor or anything. Shelva did say this. Now, whether it's true or not, we don't know. But Shelva was saying something about John, and I'd just like you to keep it in PG terms if you can. When was the first time that you remember that she ever brought this up? How long before she disappeared?
I would say probably within the 6 months of her disappearance.
Okay.
That she thought that John had a strange relationship with his own daughter. She told me about other people who said it's just not right the way.
Well, I don't want to hear what she said other people said. I only want to know what Shelva said.
Okay.
All right. What did Shelva say? What did she say?
Shelva said that they had a very intimate, strange relationship. That they were shopping at Dick's store, sporting goods store, and that they would kiss in public and hold hands and sit next to each other watching television and spend time together alone in the bathroom and situations like that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't take it anything other than I thought, oh, Shelva's might be jealous of the relationship of his daughter with him. And I kind of blew it off.
Okay.
But she intently thought that there was so much more to it, that it was wrong, it was sick, and that I think that's when she got her own apartment and distanced herself from John.
All right. So going back to that conversation, early in our interview, where they were living together, and then she got her own apartment, and I asked you, well, why would she do that? She was living, it seemed like a guy who was doing well, and that's what she wanted. Then all of a sudden she goes back and gets her own place. What you're saying is this could have been the motivation for that because she observed that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shirley, same question. When did she ever say anything to you about this?
Yes, it was in the winter of, I believe it was January or February. She was alone in her apartment and was very lonely and didn't want to be alone that weekend. And so she came up, and the next morning after breakfast, her and I were alone talking. My husband was getting ready for church probably. And she tells me this, and I'm there, I'm kind of going ballistic. What do you mean by saying something like that? If something happens to me, I'm just telling you, look at John, and they're, Shelva, that's crazy. If you're thinking this, why would anyone be around anyone like that? And you've got to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And then she went, then she takes back off to Pittston, and I think to myself, they just this is a part of this relationship. They had another spat. I'm not repeating that one.
So she says this to you, Joanne. She says this to you, Shirley. Did you two ever talk about this before she went missing?
No.
When did you two discover that you both knew about this comment? When was after she disappeared? How did that even come up between the both of you? Do you remember?
Just being concerned about the relationship, and that John saying that she just walked home, was there's something to her story that we all started sharing. And she told Joanne, she told you that? She told me that, and I blew her off.
Okay, and you kind of both had this, what I would call is similar reactions to it. Didn't really know what to make of it. Now, you said that you have an email, Joanne, from somebody else that she said this to, and I've not seen the email. The listeners should know, and I'm hoping Joanne will send that to me, or at least take a picture of it or copy it or something. I would certainly like to see it for myself if you have it.
Yes.
Who was this person that emailed you about the very same topic?
My sister-in-law, Terry, my brother's wife.
Mm-hmm.
We had taken a trip down to Pittston with a psychic, and I asked Terry to write an overview of what happened during our visit down there, and it is an email with what the psychic said, with her saying that in this email.
All right. So it's your sister-in-law saying that Shelva also said something to her about John and his daughter's unusual closeness, let's just say.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I would certainly like to see that, Joanne. Hopefully we can make that happen before this episode comes out 5 days from now.
Yeah,
I'll
send it as soon as we finish.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, so Shelva said this to 3 different people, 3 people who I believe can be trusted. We just have to remember we don't know if this is the truth or not. It very well may be the truth. it could be that Shelva's just making it up. And in fact, my impression is when she said it, that's how you two kind of took it. That maybe she was just talking a little bit.
Yes.
Okay.
And I didn't originally think about the daughter situation as being the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the day before when she said, if anything happens to me, look at John, because John being in business and the type of business he was in, she knew ins and outs of his business and the different relationships of people that he had, that she knew more about that situation. That's how I took it. Okay.
And are you saying things that might have been illegal?
Yes.
All right. We're just going to leave it at that. Now, did you or Charley ever notice any of that behavior at all? Maybe I should ask, did you ever see John around his daughter?
No, right. I never did.
So you had never been in a position to observe this at all?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. So we just have Shelva telling this to people. We're sure not where this came from. It could be true. It could be false. We're not here to start rumors or anything, but she's telling people this. And so I think that we have to talk about it. Did you ever see anybody else come to you after? Did anybody come to you after Shelva disappeared and said they observed this behavior from John?
And
for example, Faith, who is John's friend, she is the one that introduced John to Shelva. Has she ever commented on this comments that Shelva made?
I think she has. I think she thought it was just it was strange, but nothing that would put it to the level of being intimate.
Okay. So, I guess she's not agreeing with Shelva then?
That's a good question. I don't know that. I can't say 100%. I just can't.
Okay. So what you're saying is Faith has never acted, being that she knows John, she knows his daughter. She has never acted weirded out by the relationship that John had with his daughter.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Now this takes us to the next part. Did you tell me at one time, Joanne, that Shelva might have acted upon this and called the daughter's mother?
I heard that she had turned the mother and daughter into children youth services, and the mother called up Shelva screaming and yelling and carrying on because Shelva had called children and youth.
Mm-hmm.
I also know that Shelva had called the IRS and federal places about John's dealing in business also.
All right. Do you know if Children Youth Services ever checked into any of these things that Shelva called them about?
I heard that they did check into it, and they didn't find anything.
All right. Do you know around what time that Shelva might have acted upon this? Children's Youth Services. Would this have been in 2005, early 2006? Any ideas?
The end of 2005.
End of 2005, okay. So several months before she disappeared.
Right.
Okay. So we have this. She's telling people these stories. We don't know if they're true, but it may help to understand her state of mind. It may be true. On the other hand, given that she and John were ending up in court, it very well could be that they both could have been generating lies about each other just to stab each other in the back. I don't know, and it very well may be that John was saying things about Shelva that, we don't know about as well that may not be true. We just don't know. You've even stated, and I'm just gonna ask you this again, Joanne. Is there a possibility that Shelva was just saying things because she was jealous of the relationship John had with his daughter?
I truly believe Shelva believed it, whether it was true or not.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that she felt it was real.
Okay. And do you know if she was telling all these different people? She told Shirley, she told you, she told
Her
somebody,
son.
her son. Do you know if John ever found out about what she was saying?
Oh, I'm sure he did because of the children and youth being involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that even on the other part with business that he probably got audited and they looked at his business too.
Okay. And still, I know we have to, and this is the weird part about this, and still, he would show up to this graduation party on May 29th with Shelva.
Right. Well, that's where I'm very confused because they were supposed to stay away from each other. Mm-hmm. And yet Shirley saw Shelva, and Shelva said that John keeps bugging me and wants me to go out and I'm not going to go out. And then several days later, she said, I'm going to take him up and go out for my birthday. I might as well use him and get a good meal out of it.
She didn't tell me that. I met her. As I said, I stopped to see her for her birthday, getting ready for the party. And I said, well, what are you going to do for your birthday? She said, well, I got John taking me to dinner. I was real excited. And then her friend or someone told me that she got a very expensive pink purse for her birthday. And I'd like to know where the pink purse went. I asked if she had it here even. It wasn't in the items that we looked at. I didn't know what she brought to the party. But I believe her friend did run into them that night when they went out for dinner, going back to Faith again, and John and her were arguing again. So it just wasn't good.
I agree with you. Toxic relationship. What confuses me, though, is that she's out there saying these things about John, but still wants to be with him. In addition, she's trying to get him in trouble, and he is taking her out to dinner. It's just
that's the catch I don't get.
It's all very hard to understand.
Any man who is accused of having a strange relationship with his daughter and accused of bad business practices, why would you ever want to be with that person? I would run as far as I could away from her.
Well, I agree with you.
And yet he was there bugging her to go out.
Well, I agree with you, but I'm also trying to look at it from his standpoint. Why would you go anywhere with a woman who was trying to get you in trouble? I'm looking. You have to look at his point of view too. Whether he's guilty or innocent of any of this, why would he be around somebody like that?
Exactly.
So
I don't understand.
No, I don't get it either. Okay, so I think that we've covered that as much as we can. Listeners are going to have to judge that for themselves. I think that if you've dated long enough, and of course I'm still single at 49. We've all maybe been in a relationship that was not good for us for mental or physical reasons or something. This one, though, is, I'm not saying that I can't totally relate to it, but, there may be some elements of toxic relationships that we've all been in. This one seems to be one of the more severe ones. And once again, listeners will just have to judge it for themselves. Has John ever offered up any theory as to what happened to Shelva?
That's the strangest thing of all. John has my phone number. He didn't call me often, but he has called here. And yet, once she went missing, John has never called any of us. He has never offered to help. He's never said, is there anything I can do? Have you heard anything? There's been no communication at all.
So you're saying the last time you spoke to John was the day of the graduation, May 29th, 2006?
Correct.
And what about you, Shirley? Have you had any contact with him since that day?
No, I have not.
Zero.
I actually was, when I received the call, I just couldn't believe it. To answer, I was in denial, and I think I was for 5 years. I couldn't really cry until it hit me, at the 5th year vigil. I just couldn't believe anything could have happened to her.
Yeah.
I mean,
a lot of families feel that way.
My son, she babysat. She was so excited about the wedding. I kept thinking she's going to walk in the door for the wedding 6 months later. I mean, we said this recently in a conference, a workshop training we had for our nonprofit, Lead Me Home Today, that if there's one thing, generally something comes to you, you kind of figure it out. You know if you own it or you don't own it. You know if you can give some advice or think about it and give some direction. This one here, I just, to this day, I can't wrap my arms around missing. It's very hard for me. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to think. But I did know that it was a very bad relationship. And did Shelva just think that she was at the end of her rope with, going back and forth this relationship and then, all that fighting near the end? I don't know what happened. I wish I did.
Yeah. What has John done with his life since May of 2006? Do you know?
I heard that he was out of business for a short time. He's back in business. We went down and went past his business, and we saw him walk outside the door, so we know he's still there. He looked healthy. It just going on, we heard that he was dating some younger women from Shelva's best friend, Faith. That's about it.
No, any problems with the law? Did any problems with the law? Or with the IRS or anybody else in the last 14 years, once again, to your knowledge?
Oh, I wouldn't know that.
Any women?
No.
That anything's gotten back to you that he's had any problems with any of the new women in his life?
No, other than they were all very young.
Okay. And
yes, and I agree with that. Faith would always say that, he had young women around.
And is Faith still friends with him? Does she still talk to him?
Not lately, no.
Okay.
I heard of that. She was trying to keep an open relationship with him, but not lately.
Okay. Has Faith, being that she is the one who introduced Shelva and John, has she ever offered up her own theory as to what happened to Shelva?
She feels that John did something, or at least knows a lot more about it.
Okay. What has the last 14 years been like for you? I know that you've both gotten involved in the missing persons community since Shelva's disappearance, but for personally, what has this been like for you?
It seems like you wake up with it yet, and you go to bed with it yet. It's not as strong, but it's amazing. Like today, being interviewed with you and being, the anniversary of the weekend. It's daunting to think about. It's something I still can't wrap my arms around, and I wish I knew more how to work more closely with the law enforcement system. I think about things I've been watching some shows, and it's funny. Last night it was on, And last week was the first time I watched the show, and it was how someone was charged through totality and the law in Pennsylvania. And it was on again last night, and I'm thinking, well, why can't we do something, to stir John? Let's, maybe we should have had an attorney, or, wish we had a private detective, because the police can only give us so much information. And so we just go around and around about it with our thoughts. I really would never want to accuse anyone or ruin their lives, but I wish that there was some conversation with John or the police, how they're looking at this point, because I don't know any more than I knew the day that I got the phone call. What happened? She left his apartment. That's all we know.
Yeah. That is not uncommon. It's easy for me to talk, but in my experience of now 170 disappearances, that's very common. I can tell you of many families with disappearances that are even longer ago than Shelva's, where they say a lot of the same things. They don't know any more than the day they found out that their daughter, son, sister, brother, whoever, is missing. And that is certainly true in these types of disappearances where it's, well, she just walked off and we don't know what happened. It's unfortunately very common. So I'm not so sure that it's all the police's fault. It's just the circumstances. Yes, Joanne.
Well, several things. First of all, when this happened, my gut said something really bad happened. I knew instinctively. Shirley took 5 years to come around to it. And I felt I was fighting the family as well as the police. First, I went into a deep depression for 2 years, and it stunted me in every way possible, with my businesses, with my family. It was really, it turned my life upside down. And I just can't tell you the feeling you get. I get teary-eyed now thinking about how could this happen to our family. We're well known, well respected, and yet such a nightmare that you wouldn't ever expect to ever come to visit an average family like us.
And I struggle with really not. Shelva always put on a really strong front. And my sister-in-law would always remark that if things were good, Shelva would show up, because she always liked to show up when it was good. And I beat myself up of not seeing her struggle.
Well, the thing is, when you look back at her life, she didn't have the skills, money, or connections to start a new life. That's I look at that and say, where would she go? What would she do? How could she make a way? She couldn't do it here with all of our support. How could she do it out there? So I don't believe that she took off.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand. I think that her age is definitely a factor in this disappearance. You're talking about, starting over and things. Me being in my 40s myself, it's a lot easier to think about moving to a different area or starting a new career when you're 25 in contrast to 45.
Exactly. And that's a very good point, because I think that she did want to find, the nice home, a good person that could bring in, two families blended together. And, she loved to throw a birthday party. She loved to throw Thanksgiving. She wanted that around her. and she just couldn't make that happen. I don't know. It was a very unusual year, and I hate to say that, but I was like the day with the pills and not wanting her to fight John.
Yeah.
I just couldn't see any good coming out of this. It seems like things were spiraling out of control, and I don't know why. I don't know. To my knowledge about drugs, I don't know about John's friends or the community there. I really can't. Like I said, I didn't want to destroy his life. I feel like that was the police job to go after and find the evidence.
Well, it is true, at least for a while. I mean, you have to let the police try to do their work. But 14 years later, as most of the other guests who have been on the program know, that after 14 years, usually, family's going to have to do some of these things on their own. So it's very difficult because you don't, frankly, have a lot of facts in this disappearance. And I can understand why John is a focus. That's why we talked about him. But there did seem to be some things going on with Shelva herself that might have been brought on by John, surely, that could lead, people to believe that maybe he didn't have anything to do with it. And that, once again, that we leave that up to the listeners to determine. Do you have a Facebook page or anything else for Shelva's disappearance?
Go ahead.
We have Lead Me Home Today Facebook page.
Okay.
But it's beyond Shelva. It is for all missing.
Okay. Say that. Why don't you say that name again one more time, Joanne?
Lead Me Home Today.
Lead Me Home Today, and that is the Facebook page.
Correct.
And that is something that you and Shirley run together, a nonprofit organization?
Yes.
Okay.
We have another volunteer that actually does the Facebook page, and she puts on information about missing people in Pennsylvania and Lower New York.
Okay.
Adult missing people.
Adult?
Yeah, we
Okay.
focus, our 5013C focuses on adult missing.
Yeah.
Because there's amber alerts for children.
Sure.
And there's silver alerts for older people, but the adult population has the right to go missing.
It's tough. I agree, and that's what I do too. We focus on adult missing. That's what we do. However, I would say that we shy away from missing children for the reason a lot of times their parents are the ones who are involved, so it's hard to find people that you trust to talk to. So maybe it's a little different standard here. But yes, we mainly focus on adult missing people as well. And you're exactly right. That's what makes these kinds of disappearances so tough, because 40-year-old women are allowed to leave their lives that they want.
Exactly.
And that makes it tough, for sure. For sure. Do you have a website for your nonprofit, or just the Facebook page?
We do have a website, but right now it is not published.
Okay.
We had our 5-year contract run out, and we're in the midst of rebuilding it again.
I know that feeling.
Also, Ed, the reason we have been working with crime victims advocates out of Harrisburg, and our senator directed us towards this organization. And then as time went on, after we, presented our objectives to Lead Me Home Today, we decided that we needed to go back in and have a new focus. So we were given and pointed to a wonderful facilitator. She used to be the head of Crime Victims Advocacy in Harrisburg, and her name is Carol Lavery. And Carol set up in March, the first part of March, we had a work session to reevaluate our goals and objectives. Then it was to be a one-day workshop. It became so involved that, and she only works with advocates, because she believes in advocacy, and she believes that we have a good cause here for adult missing. So we went back, and because we were to go back because of coronavirus, March 28th, we don't have it back. We wanted to redo our website and go back in with her to reestablish our presentation of Lead Me Home. So that's why we're in a pause mode right now.
Yeah, a lot of people are in the pause, and of course, as I know that Joanne and I talked about a few weeks ago, because of the coronavirus, some of these missing persons days have been missed as well.
Yes.
I know that you both know Mary Lau, correct, from New York, and of course,
wonderful lady.
Oh yeah, one of my favorite. In fact, I just talked to her a couple weeks ago. Of course, New York's Missing Persons Day had to be canceled along with other events in other states. So a lot of things have been put on hold in the community. Yeah. So, well, you let me know when that website is back up, and I will surely link to it so people can go to it. So, let's make sure, and I will make sure people know about the Facebook page as well. Do either of you have any final words before we complete this interview?
I would like to ask about, presenting your podcast and how, when we go back in our work session for Lead Me Home, is there a presence there that you think would be valuable for the missing to direct to your podcast site?
Well, we talk to, if you are, we always talk to everybody. If you're talking about other families who are in the same situation that you two are, and of course the rest of your siblings and other family members, we talk to everybody. We'd love to, we're always looking to have people on the program. Of course, in this particular case, it took us a few years, and that's great. It's finally great to have you both on. So I'm always looking to talk to anybody. My assistant Emily is always looking to talk to anybody, any people who have had loved ones who have gone missing. And on top of that, we do try to teach the listeners regarding missing persons cases so they can become better amateur sleuths. And this podcast is everywhere. So,
okay, and then my next question was, when I looked at your presentation and all the things on criminal justice and the members and what they were doing, it's funny, I had been in contact before I saw that with trying to make contact and this virus with a lady that was in the paper locally at the college that Joanne mentioned earlier, where Janelle graduated from down the road, and working in reconstructive, what do I want to say, forensics, reconstructive, and she was showing a panel, and then I was just wondering about, and my question to you, Ed, is a criminal justice program someone that we could, would be valuable to Lead Me Home, as far as maybe, assisting us with our website, not just for Shelva. I'm talking about all missing in Pennsylvania.
Well, my attitude toward schooling, if that's what you're asking me about, as far as criminal justice majors and local schools, my attitude and what I'm trying to do is going to speak to schools about missing persons cases in educating future criminal justice members, whether it's local police or state police or FBI, Secret Service, whoever, that we begin to change the attitude of the police toward missing persons cases. And we have to start that with the younger generations, because I feel that the law enforcement officers who have been on the beat 10, 15 years, maybe it's a little too late to get to them.
It's funny you say that. I believe that I see a little more openness just in the last month or two, an experience I had before this coronavirus, talking with a lieutenant, and he wanted to coordinate our Lead Me Home packets and put in his police cars, because a lot of people don't know what to do. And our packet says, you know what to do when a loved one goes missing. Things that we learned over these years. This is what we compiled.
Absolutely great. I think it's great.
And so I see more of an openness, but I think that in another conversation I'd like to have with you when we finish our work session with Carol Lavery is that it looks like we're going to go back to, we've been, all last winter I was talking on the phone with people and from 1-800 PA missing and different things, and they go, and even crime victim advocacy, because they wanted to put us on the legislative board, and we're there, I think we've got to go back to some basic things that are in the works, like Billy's Law, that's for missing people, and how that would be networked differently. And that's not in Pennsylvania, but we just found out in between this work session that was canceled with the virus, which representatives have it here. And now it's grown very important to me that we work with Billy's Law, that it's in Pennsylvania, that we also go back to our original objective that the family should be informed when someone else takes over the case. And we had 3 objectives, and over this past winter, I just thought we can't chase every missing person down, but we can still point the finger of where they need to go and what.
Sure.
I don't think we're years off to being where.
Sure.
I went blank up in Albany, New York. Our Center for Hope is.
Where Mary is.
And
yes.
we're not there yet, but we don't have to put on the missing persons day. Harrisburg sent us a paper. There's a huge conference with new technology, and it's in September in Las Vegas. And they said maybe you ought to go there and see what other states are doing now.
Sure.
And so we were into all this conversation, like, yeah, you're right. And maybe we need to go and build a relationship and speak with the police association, because it is evolving. And with technology, it's evolving even more. And these are the people that, and I hope that lead me home, that we can start making somewhat of a difference for anyone, regardless of the circumstances, that leaves us, as they tell us, that we have now become the victims of this circumstance here.
Yeah.
So anyway, I hope to stay in touch with you about that.
Course.
And I just wanted to ask about the criminal thing, but you're absolutely right. They're making us move forward and working with them and forward-thinking people.
We're just trying to do our part. I've done this for 3.5 years, and I think that after this amount of time and these amount of cases, that I can see the weaknesses in investigations and where the mistakes are made. And my goal is to make sure that those mistakes happen less. That's my goal.
Well, we certainly appreciate you and your efforts on that.
Thanks.
And I hope your podcast is extremely, on all of them, well supported and helping the cause.
I appreciate that. And
I have the letter from my sister-in-law. What is your email address so I can send it right now?
Sure. Unfound Podcast. So UNFOUNDPODCAST@gmail.com.
Unfoundpodcast@gmail.com.
That's right.
Okay, got it. I'm sending it right now.
Thank you. And I want to thank both of you for appearing on this episode of Unfound. And that was my interview with Shelva's sisters, Shirley Masters and Joanne Decker. I thank them for joining me and all of you on this episode. Like last week with John Polos, I've known Shirley and Joanne for almost 3 years now. I'm glad we could finally get together for our talk. Shelva's disappearance plays out like many we've had on Unfound. Most recently, Christy Nichols and Danielle Sleeper. Men who claim they got into arguments with the missing women right before they disappeared. These men then claim they did not harm these women in any way. Yet we all know what we suspect. The men killed these women. But Shelva's case strikes me as being different in some considerable ways. First, in my opinion, Shelva showed a lot more personal problems than other women in these types of cases, mainly job insecurity and money issues. Second, Shelva's mental stability could be called into question. On one hand, she had made a horrible allegation against John and relayed her suspicions to many other people. However, despite the story she was telling, Shelva wanted to be in John's company. Would a woman in her right mind do that? Third, given the path Shelva would have taken that night to go home if John is telling the truth, it's not hard to believe Shelva could have been depressed and possibly tipsy from the party just hours before, and she walked down to the river, which was within yards of the street she would have taken home, and been swept away. All 3 points are very strong if we are to craft a theory in which only Shelva herself was involved. But what gets in the way of all of that, including believing John had something to do with her disappearance? The TV in Shelva's apartment being on when people finally entered it. This could lead me to believe Shelva did make it home that night. Otherwise, we almost have to believe she left it on before leaving her apartment the day before. Maybe. Some people do that, even myself. But unless someone can claim Shelva left her TV on often, I think we must conclude she didn't. So we're left with a disappearance where some logical reasoning doesn't go along with the glaring fact of the case. They're no good together. I'll leave the rest of the theorizing up to you. And that's the program. If you found it informative, please go to the app that you use to listen to Unfound and give this podcast a nice review. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've been listening to Unfound.